leading the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals in his first season as head coach. Ime Udoka facing a likely full season suspension.
Not necessarily a guarantee that he is back in this job after a year. Who knows what happens with Joe Mazzulla as an interim coach and how they move forward with Udoka.
We got some breaking news that is without a doubt going to alter the entire trajectory of the Eastern Conference Champions season. I mean, the Boston Celtics are in a very difficult situation, and it has to do with their head coach, Ime Udoka. But before we get to the content, man, we're still giving away copies of NBA 2K23 on my Twitter account. All you have to do is follow and have my notifications on. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro.
They won't come out and say it, and since I'm a part of the media now, and I try not to be like everyone else. I try to, report and talk with facts and honesty. And I clearly have to say last night, without knowing all the facts, I spoke on Ime Udoka's defense. And after finding out the facts after I spoke, I erased what I posted because this situation in Boston is deep, it's messy, it's 100 times uglier than any of us thought, and that's why I erased what I said. Some things happened that I can't condone, I can't back.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Last year, the Boston Celtics had a storybook finish to their season. I know a lot of Celtics fans are disappointed at the fact that they weren't able to win an NBA championship, despite being favored to win an NBA championship, which, to be honest, I never quite understood that because from the very beginning, I thought the Golden State Warriors were going to win that matchup, but I digress. But if you go back all the way to last season, we were seeing headlines like this. Should the Boston Celtics break up Jaylen and Jason? Is it time for them to move on from either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum? They were undergoing a gigantic front office overhaul. I mean, their general manager of nearly 20 years decided to step down, and they decided to elevate their head coach, Brad Stevens, to the general manager role. I mean, you don't see things like this, and there was a lot of question marks about this team. Their biggest splash from the offseason was getting rid of Kemba Walker and bringing in Al Horford. I mean, look, in terms of continuity, Al Horford was clearly huge for that team. On paper, it wasn't the most exciting acquisition, but I said at the time that this was one of those decisions that you make whenever you want to really boost up team chemistry in a locker room, and frankly, it really worked. But that's still not enough for a Boston Celtics fan to have been excited for their season last year, and to be honest, opening up the first half of the season, they looked fairly pedestrian at best. It was the second half of the season where the Boston Celtics defense really hit their stride and established an identity for their entire team. They carried that momentum all the way to the NBA playoffs, where they were able to make a run to the NBA Finals, a run that we never would have expected from this team. And things looked really freaking good. Ime Udoka, their head coach, seemed to have been a home run of a hire. And although they weren't able to beat the Golden State Warriors, I'm sure there was a lot of lessons that they learned and a lot of valuable experience that they attained that they could carry forward into this season and do their best to contend once again, because the roster more or less, at least in terms of their core players, hasn't necessarily changed much, save for the addition of Malcolm Brogdon, which I personally am really excited about, and Danilo Gallinari, who is out for the season, unfortunately.
So Mike, things seem to be really good. Why are you making this video?
I don't think I've ever seen a storyline like this, at least in the NBA, for quite some time. In terms of Ime Udoka, his season is in jeopardy. As a matter of fact, Ime Udoka even considered resigning as a result of what is currently going down with him. So last night, we got a very shocking tweet from Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania. And to be honest, it was fairly random and something that none of us really expected. ESPN sources, Boston Celtics coach Ime Udoka is facing possible disciplinary action, including a significant suspension for an unspecified violation of organizational guidelines. Discussions are ongoing within the Celtics on a final determination. I want want you to understand the significance of this, because that means the Celtics kept this information so top secret that not even Adrian Wojnarowski was able to get a scoop on the real reason why Ime Udoka was being suspended, at least at the time. Now we do have information about what's going on with Ime Udoka, and it's very shocking, to be honest, and obviously a little polarizing. As time went on, Adrian Wojnarowski said that no decision has been made on the length of a suspension, but internal discussions have included scenarios that would keep Udoka out the entirety of the 2022 to 2023 season. So before I tell you what he did and we dig into that, this is clearly really significant. I mean, you have your head coach that took you to the greatest finish your team has ever seen since the last time they won a championship, almost 15 years ago under Doc Rivers. And yes, I understand they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but regardless, this is a very significant move. Having your head coach that clearly made a huge difference in your culture, that clearly was able to take you over the hump into the NBA Finals, and not to mention the journey for the Boston Celtics to get to the finals wasn't an easy one. In the first round, they had to beat the Brooklyn Nets, which was one of those teams that we didn't really consider to be a true 7th seed. And they went out and swept the Brooklyn Nets. Yes, I know they were injured, but come on. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in the first round of the playoffs is no easy feat. Then following that, they faced off against the defending NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks, and they were able to beat them before making it to the Eastern Conference Finals and facing off against the Miami Heat, and they were able to beat them before obviously losing to the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. So you have to give the man credit where credit's due, because clearly he's a significant reason as to why the Boston Celtics experienced such tremendous success last year. So eventually, Woj broke the news earlier today and told us what's really going down. Boston Celtics coach Ime Udoka is likely facing a suspension for the entire 2022 to 2023 season for his role in a consensual relationship with a female staff member, sources tell ESPN. A formal announcement is expected as soon as today. Don't worry, we're gonna get you guys that announcement real soon from the Boston Celtics, but in terms of the real reason why Ime Udoka got suspended, and props to the Celtics for keeping this information from Woj for an additional 12 hours, I have some information in regards to what went down. Ime Udoka apparently is in a relationship with Nia Long, and Nia Long actually posted this onto her Instagram story in regards to the situation. And it says clearly, when you see people change their whole life and start walking down a path of enlightenment, hugging trees, connecting with nature, loving themselves, embracing positivity, and letting that light shine, understand one thing: that light that you see, understand one thing about that light: they had to go into the darkness to get it. No shadow, no light. So we don't know if this has to do with Ime Udoka, man, honestly, but it's interesting because apparently they were separated during the time that this went down, and Long and Ime Udoka currently have a son together. They've been together for about 12 years. So this brings us to a huge question about the morality of the situation. I mean, first things first, props to the NBA and the Boston Celtics, because they clearly decided, hey, we need to take the moral high road here. So just a heads up, part of the reason this took an extra day to upload is, one, I was waiting on the Boston Celtics statement, two, I was waiting on Ime Udoka's statement, and three, I was waiting on a deep dive as to what really went down. So we have all of that for you at this point, and it's the reason why it took me an extra day to get you guys this video. So first, here's the Boston Celtics official statement and official punishment for Ime Udoka. The Boston Celtics have announced today that the team has suspended head coach Ime Udoka for the 2022 to 2023 season for violations of team policies. A decision about his future with the Celtics beyond this season will be made at a later date. The suspension takes effect immediately. It's important to note the second to last sentence in this statement, because Ime Udoka is suspended for an entire season, but a decision about whether he will be the Celtics head coach after a whole year is going to be made later. So it's not a guarantee that Udoka is going to come back and become the head coach of the Boston Celtics. There's a chance that after a season of being suspended, the Celtics move on from Udoka Udoka altogether. I wonder how that works. Does that mean that Udoka could just start looking for alternate jobs, or is he going to reach out to people for plan B? Here's Udoka's statement on the entire situation, and he seems very apologetic for the most part, saying that I want to apologize to our players, fans, and the entire Celtics organization and my family for letting them down. I am sorry for putting the team in this difficult situation, and I accept the team's decision. Out of respect for everyone involved, I will have no further comment. If you went on to Twitter, man, it seems like a lot of people are mad at Udoka for allegedly cheating on Nia Long, but apparently during this time they were separated. It's a whole confusing situation, but I think we'll get more info from this if we read the Athletic article, which the Athletic is probably my favorite publication. They never miss when it comes to information in regards to this situation, and it's by Shams Charania himself. So the Celtics suspend Ime Udoka for the 2022 to 2023 season, and the coach's future with Boston is in question. So the Celtics have suspended coach Ime Udoka for the entirety of the 2022 to 2023 season for violations of the team's policy, the franchise announced on Thursday. The team added in a statement that a decision about his future with the Celtics beyond this season will be made at a later date. The second-year coach's punishment is a result of an intimate relationship with a female member of the organization. So just a side note, because I don't know if you could effectively hunt who the female that he has said relationship with in the organization, but a lot of people are suggesting it is this individual right here, allegedly. I don't necessarily know if it's true, because at the same time, obviously the Boston Celtics are denying it.
I would reiterate that it was a long, thorough process, and obviously it's been a hard time. But I think the only thing that I would like to say, I thought we have a lot of talented women in our organization, and I thought yesterday was really hard on them, and I think that nobody can control Twitter speculation and rampant bullshit. But I do think that we, as an organization, have a responsibility to make sure we're there to support them now, because a lot of people were dragged unfairly into that.
I'm not necessarily too interested in hunting that individual down. I'm more interested in the basketball ramifications of it, but that's mainly just if you guys wanted to put a face to a picture while you're creating the story in your heads. So some members of the Celtics organization first became aware of the relationship in July, sources said. At that time, team leadership was led to believe by both parties that the relationship was consensual. But sources said that the woman recently accused Udoka of making unwanted comments toward her, leading the team to launch a set of internal interviews. I knew there was something suspect about this, guys. I mean, it seemed so odd for them to just go up to Udoka while he had this personal, intimate relationship with an employee, which, by the way, you're not supposed to do. But if it happens, if both sides are happy, you don't just go to two individuals that are in a happy consensual relationship despite them working together and say,
this isn't gonna work. We're gonna have to suspend Udoka for a whole season for doing this.
It's usually when one party feels uncomfortable, which is why I was a little skeptical about the consensual part. But I feel like the Celtics are doing their absolute best to paint Udoka in a positive light. And it sucks that this is happening in July. So this is literally a few months ago, after Udoka was able to take the Celtics to the NBA Finals. So you might be wondering, okay, what's going to happen to the Boston Celtics now? And it's really interesting because I see this trend happening in the NFL, and I suppose it's making its way to the NBA, the trend of having very young head coaches lead the team. And honestly, it's worked in the NFL. It might work in the NBA, because the man that is getting a huge promotion and a remarkable opportunity as a result of this unfortunate circumstance for Ime Udoka is Joe Mazzulla, who was formerly an assistant under Udoka's coaching staff, and he was going to be his top assistant last season after his previous top assistant, Will Hardy, left the organization in July to become the head coach of the Utah Jazz. Ben Sullivan and Damon Stoudemire were the other front bench assistants last year, but the Celtics have decided to go with Mazzulla over them. It also gives you a little bit of background in regards to who Mazzulla is. Mazzulla has been a rising name in coaching ranks for some time. The only full assistant on Stevens' staff who stayed on for Udoka's regime. Good play, Mazzulla. Great play. Mazzulla was a surprise finalist for the Jazz job, a rare feat for someone who isn't even a front bench assistant. He is well respected for his game planning on both sides of the ball and has the kind of understated but steady demeanor that has defined Stevens and Udoka's tenures. The Celtics opened training camp in 4 days with the majority of their NBA Finals team back for another run at the title. They opened the season October 18th with a home game against the 76ers. Wow. Okay, that is a crazy change to make 4 days before training camp. But for the most part, man, this is just really unfortunate for Ime Udoka. I mean, I'm really happy I waited to make this video because now that we got the full story, it now makes significantly more sense in my head. I asked you guys whether or not you think Ime Udoka getting suspended for a whole year for a consensual relationship is an overreaction, and a lot of your responses varied. And one response that was pretty interesting to me is, this is kind of ironic, he got more time than Deshaun Watson did in the NFL. That's actually insane. I didn't even think of this. Some people think you should have been fined. Some people think a whole year is way too much. I mean, when you get to the point where someone in the consensual relationship is beginning to feel uncomfortable, then obviously you need to suspend Ime Udoka. And I don't know the nature of the comments he made. I still feel like the Celtics are doing whatever they can to try to save his face a little bit. But at the same time, man, this is a very cautionary tale for everyone that's following this story. I mean, if you really take pride in your career, if you are really career oriented, you gotta be careful that you don't sabotage it over silly little things like this. I mean, Ime Udoka possibly had a stable job for the next 5 years minimum after taking the Celtics to a NBA Finals. And honestly, it could have even been more considering how young the nucleus of the Celtics were, and they were ready to compete for another championship this year. The Celtics loved Udoka because he was pretty much an extension of what Brad Stevens was doing, as Brad Stevens went up to the front office and year one was a huge success. And honestly, he ruined everything as a result of this. And now we don't know if he's gonna be back in a year or not, but regardless, it's a cautionary tale for all of us to take. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.